ASUS is back, and I'm using back in more than one way here, with another PC case, but this time they're keeping it classic and classy with a minimalistic mid-tower design. Sounds a bit dated? Well, this one is actually a mid-tower design that has all the connections in the back. Way more interesting now, right? In a world filled with dual chamber cases and copycats, can ASUS bring something new to the table while honoring the mid-tower cases that have come before this one? And is the fact that it supports BTF or back connect more than enough to spark your renewed interest? Well, we're about to find out all that and way more as we review the ASUS TUF Gaming GT302 ARGB right here, right now on Robeytech. To say that ASUS has given us a number of visually interesting and impressive PC cases would be an understatement. Heck, we still use the ROG Hyperion as our metric for redonkulously huge cases that you can also use to improve as an Olympic powerlifter. So when we heard about the ASUS TUF Gaming GT302 ARGB, we weren't quite sure what we were in for. But when we got to CES and we got our first look, what we got was this. It's a rather simple, unassuming mid-tower case that seems to be drawing inspiration from crowd favorites like the Corsair 4000D, the Corsair 5000D, maybe a little NZXT H7 Flow, and some Lian Cool 216 thrown in there without the giant fans in the front. And you know what? We're not even all that mad. With so many dual chamber cases basically skyrocketing in popularity. I mean, it's like every build. Dual chamber, fish tank. We've needed something new. Maybe some newer mid-tower case to really remind us of our roots and to fight back against the fishbowl dominance. Do we have a revolutionary case on our hands? Okay. Guys, look, settle down. I'm just trying to build some artificial tension here. There is no reason to fight, no need to get on this edge of your seat. We love PC cases of every shape and size around here. Full tower, mid-tower, mini, dual chamber, and yes, even the weird ones too. We're looking at you, Ozza. Drama aside, we're gonna give the GT302 the ultimate case review treatment right here at Robeytech and do everything we can to shake this case up. At the time of making this video, the TUF Gaming GT302 ARGB was available in black or white for $149.99. Now, there is actually a third option for how to buy the GT302, but I'm gonna share that in just a little minute. Just be warned that it'll be a very different price from the one I just mentioned. You know what, just to get you excited about what we're gonna talk about. Now, as for the footprint of the GT302, it's about 19.09 inches or 485 millimeters deep, 9.25 inches or 235 millimeter wide, and 20.47 inches or 520 millimeters tall. So it's slightly taller than the average carry-on suitcase, but honestly, it's probably not gonna fit inside one. Now, I'll talk about this because it's technically a part of the outside of the case, but the vented side panel on the back and the tempered glass in the front are actually swappable. That means if you're really proud of your cable management, you could put it on display with the tempered glass in the back and show off all your handiwork, which, if you do, please share it with me. I would totally be down to see that. I also want to call out the design on the front here. We've seen some cases that have taken a wide open approach to front air intake, and the GT302 allows that trend with big 8mm squares checkering the front. There is mesh, okay? So that's just something that might be worth being mindful of if you have pets that like to shed. Fortunately, Robeycat does not shed. Now, as far as weight goes, ASUS doesn't list any of that information for the TUF Gaming GT302 ARGB. We did ask with two pretties before the please, but according to Amazon, the GT302 weighs 30.6 pounds or 13.88 kilograms. But that could be the weight of the entire box and packing materials along with the case itself. If the GT302 did weigh 30.6 pounds, that would be the same weight as about 20 dozen eggs, which would feed Disney's Gaston for about 4 days. For case I/O and control, the GT302 has two USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, one USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 Type-C port with transfer speeds of up to 20 gigabytes per second, a combined audio jack, as well as power and LED buttons. All of these are on the top of the case's front side for basically easy access. I totally pointed to the wrong place, I meant right here. Now, moving inside, the GT302 has support for micro ATX, mini ITX, and ATX motherboards. It can also support eATX motherboards up to 280 millimeters or 10.9 inches wide. If you remove that plastic shroud right there, that means that you could throw in like those massive ROG Maximus Extreme Z790 boards if you wanted to. Now, one of the cool things that we love to see, and I mentioned this earlier, is that the GT302 does support back connect motherboards, including ASUS's new BTF line. And this is where the whole third way to buy the GT302 comes in. If you want to bundle the GT302 with an ASUS TUF Gaming Z790 BTF motherboard and a TUF Gaming RTX 4070 Ti Super BTF White overclock GPU, you could do so for a cool $1,349.97. Listen, I'm not telling you what to do, only that you can do it. Look, if you want to see what that looks like, ta-da! It's right here. This is the build we're talking about that would be with that bundle. It makes for a very clean looking build, and I'm not gonna lie, I can see why ASUS is making it super easy to get the items bundled because of the unique nature of the motherboard, GPU, and case, and just saying, look, it works together well, and it takes away some of the guesswork. Now, before I jump ahead and talk more about what the case fits, it's important to also note that this does support both BTF ecosystems from ASUS and MSI's Project Zero system. However, this is important. Not all cases support both, and the reason is the fact that ASUS's BTF ecosystem has power built into the motherboard, so the case needs to support access to that location. Not all back connect cases are created equal, which is unfortunate, so it's very important that we make this distinction. Case in point, this case does not support Gigabyte's Project Stealth ecosystem for GPUs because the case doesn't have the allotted slot for the GPU power connections. Luckily, Project Zero and ASUS's BTF have a lot more of the same requirements, and we haven't heard much about Project Stealth in a while, so here's hoping this doesn't become a problem down the road, accommodating a bunch of different standards. Moving along, and speaking of accommodating things, the GT302 can fit GPUs up to 407mm in length. This covers many of the larger GPUs on the market, including the largest GPUs from ASUS's TUF Gaming and ASUS ROG, like the ROG Strix 4090 BTF, if you're gonna do an ROG BTF build, that is. That's right, there's an ROG one coming. And if you wanna see us build the ASUS ROG BTF system, go ahead and slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss those reviews, those PC cases, those laptops, AIOs, GPUs, guides, builds, live streams, giveaways, so much more right here on Robeytech. As for fans, which we hope you become a fan of the channel, the GT302 comes with a few pre-installed fans, hence the ARGB in the case's full name. It has three 140mm PWM ARGB fans in the case front, as well as one 140mm PWM ARGB fan in the case rear. Just to be clear, the GT302 does not come with a controller module. However, ASUS does have all of the fans wired up with splitters, so ASUS isn't really leaving users out in the cold without enough connection points for that many ARGB fans. But as for the cable management of these wires, that's a whole different story. Speaking of cold, if you want to add different cooling by replacing fans, 140mm fans are your only choice for the front. And 120mm fans and 140mm fans can go on the top, but for the case rear, you can either do 140 or 120mm fan. As for AIOs, there isn't quite enough space at the top or the front of the case for a 420mm AIO, but the top can support a 360mm one, while the front can actually only do 280mm, which would look kind of weird. Now, if you really wanted to put either a 120 or 140mm radiator in the back, you could, but we'd probably have a question or two as to why you did. Probably you could put one of those really rad, reservoirs back there though. Now, just a quick note here, as we're talking about mounting things in the GT302, the whole top of the case is actually removable. And I don't mean you can just remove a top panel or a bracket. I mean the whole enchilada actually comes off. Now, it takes removing a couple screws to make it happen, but if you really, really want to pull the top off of the case and work inside, you absolutely could, which I did during the live stream, and honestly, I really, really liked it. Moving on to storage space, the GT302 has options for either two 3.5-inch or up to four 2.5-inch SSDs. There are two mounting plates for SSDs located on the case wall right near the front of the case, and there's also the drive cage that can either fit two 2.5-inch or two 3.5-inch drives. That cage can actually be found at the bottom of the case, hidden behind the PSU shroud. It's tucked away where my team likes to hide candy bar wrappers that they've stolen from my stash. They think I didn't know. Since we're down in that spot, let's talk about PSU support. The TUF Gaming GT302 can house power supplies up to 220mm in length. The space is covered up, which makes it really, really tempting to just ram cables down in that spot. But you're not gonna do that, right? I mean, I know I've taught you better than that. Also, you know what? I'm gonna mention this while you're here if you're thinking about doing a back connect build in this case. PSU support for back connect is going to require very specific cable types for your PSU. PSUs like the Tough Gaming Gold, the ROG Aura Edition, or the Loki PSUs from ASUS specifically for their malleability of cables is going to be really important to pull off back connect builds. Sorry if it's so specific, but if you don't use these types of PSUs, you won't get the back panel on. And even with it, it may still be a struggle. And it's a good thing that we've taken serious notes on cable management because you're gonna need it to do a bit of that in the GT302, especially if you're gonna remove that plastic cableway cover to fit a larger motherboard inside. While ASUS does give builders some fairly deep channels for our CPU and motherboard cables, the main cableway is located right next to some really big openings. They're like giant windows. So even if you're using the Velcro straps, you may still need to zip tie your cables tight to make sure nothing is like peeking out. Fortunately, there are also several well-placed tie-down points across the case, so you're not solely dependent on the channels. There's also a sweet access point for GPU power cabling if you decide not to do a BTF build, and it even has a rubber grommet covering too. We do wish that ASUS had thrown a few more extra grommets to clean up the bigger cableways, but I guess we'll have to be content with the ones that we have. Now, as for the front panel cables and connections, can we just point out how much we love ASUS for this? Not only did they give us a unified front panel header, which seems to be really difficult for some reason from other manufacturers, but they also gave us cables that match the case's color too. So in this case, the GT302, they're all white. These things do seem insignificant, but they're nice touches and they really make for some sick, clean builds. So now that we know a bit more about the GT302, what fits in it and all of its nuances, it's time to find out if this understated case will remain understated or if it's gonna make a scene in our thermal benchmarks. Spoilers, don't let the looks fool you. This case has become one of the coolest cases we've tested. While idling, the ASUS TUF Gaming GT302 averaged 22 degrees Celsius on the CPU and 28 degrees Celsius on the GPU. That's a whole 2 degrees cooler on the CPU side of things than the Antec C5 and the Fractal Design North XL glass. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was with an AIO. When we tested it with a tower-style air cooler, it ever so slightly bested both of the Fractal North XL cases with a CPU temperature average at the low end of 25 degrees Celsius. So let's go to full CPU load. The GT302 continued its 5-part plan for thermal domination with an average CPU temperature of 68 degrees. The next closest case was actually the tempered glass Fractal North XL at 71. Now, to be fair, the GT302 did falter ever so slightly under CPU load in our air cooler test, dropping behind both North XL cases to 77 degrees Celsius. But it was still hot on their heels with a 1 degree separation between them. As for our 1440p gaming benchmarks, the GT302 averaged 38 degrees on the CPU and 58 degrees on the GPU. Can we pause just for a minute to appreciate how nuts these numbers are? For context, this is 4 degrees Celsius cooler than the NZXT H6 Flow, a case that has nearly been untouchable this entire year. Even when using an air cooler, the GT302 held a solid 2 to 3 degree lead in both CPU and GPU temps, ahead of both the North XL cases and the H6 Flow. This thing is a cooling beast. Now, a little bit of response to feedback. Just to be clear, you're gonna see a picture here of all of the parts that we use in all of our testing when we test our cases. This is all in the same ambient temperature with the same hardware to make sure that we're actually doing an apples to apples comparison. These aren't just random numbers we pull out of our buttocks. With numbers like this, however, it's hard to find any fault with the GT302. But there are some things that we think are worth pointing out. Thing number one, this case, it is back connect compatible, but I would not say it's back connect friendly when you have the wrong power supply. I know I touched on it when we talked about the PSU compatibility, but it is absolutely worth mentioning twice. We built inside the GT302 with both a standard ATX motherboard, aka a normal build, and ASUS's new BTF system. While the standard ATX had a few quirks, which we're gonna talk about here in a moment, it's the BTF system that actually gave us some fits, specifically when it came to have enough space to connect major power cables in the back to the motherboard. Fortunately, in our BTF build, we were using the new ASUS ROG Strix 850 watt power supply, which had incredible malleable cables. Honestly, I don't know if any other PSU would have allowed us to connect these cables and still be able to get the back cover on the case. As it stands, because we knew that the front glass and the back were actually swappable, we tried to put the tempered glass panel on the back so that we could show off our beautiful back connect cable management, and we literally could not get it to fit. Even the mesh front panel was bulging just a tad bit when we put it back. it's almost like the case needs like just a ½ inch wider. Now, ASUS says that they are going to be releasing a wiring guide to help builders with their cable run, which tells you something. But in the meantime, it's hard to recommend the GT302 for a BTF system without the use of one of ASUS's new power supplies, which is a bit of a letdown considering that this is an otherwise amazing case. Seriously, ASUS, it just needs a bit more space back there and it would be so much better. Thing number 2, we are fans of the fans, but there are 2 details that we hold against ASUS. As seen from our data, these fans are actually really impressive, especially for RGB fans. Not throwing shade at RGB here, but typically when you start adding things like RGB to moving fan blades, something has to compensate to ensure that neither operation gets in the way of the other. But that's kind of beside the point. The main point here is that the fans also have separate PWM and ARGB control headers, which is perfectly normal. No matter how spoiled we've gotten with unified fan systems, this is still kind of the norm. The big issue is that the cables are connected via separate PWM and ARGB splitters when they come with the case. We have no problem using splitters, but since the rear fan is so far away from the rest, it limits where you can plug these cables into your motherboard. Basically, it locks you into using one of the topmost PWM connectors, but you might be out of luck if your motherboard doesn't have an ARGB header up there. However, here's the caveat, if you are going to be using the TUF Gaming BTF board in a BTF build, all of the stuff actually lines up perfectly. And it's like, you know what, it's kind of like ASUS was expecting users to choose that for this case. Now, if you are using a standard build that's not back connect, the problem can be fixed with some rewiring or by taking the rear fan completely out of the signal chain, but there are a lot of cables to think about when you start unplugging and replugging things in. And you'll probably need to manage them better than how they are managed coming out of the factory. You know what else could have fixed this issue? A unified fan system. Listen, ASUS, we know you can do it. You ship lots of AIOs with these. These fans are great, but they get so messy in the back, and the ARGB headers just kind of slip out way too easily. Thing number 3, the GT302 is mid-tower by name, but it has full tower aspirations. While it's not as colossal as the ROG Hyperion, the TUF Gaming GT302 ARGB is not a small case. While it categorically falls in the bracket of mid-tower cases, just be aware that it's probably going to take up more room than other cases with the mid-tower name. It's not a bad thing, it's just something we want you to be aware of. Let's look at this all together. We were genuinely impressed by the ASUS TUF Gaming GT302 ARGB. It's a big case, but it's got a ton of room for building. It's got a decent amount of space for cable management. I love the Velcro ties back here, and they're just so easy to work with. And the fans, they just keep things on the frosty side. Even in our live stream build, when we used ASUS's new ROG Strix LC3, we saw incredible performance when we ran the benchmarks. Also, when using the ASUS BTF system, or more specifically, the bundle that you can get with all the components together, you could end up with a very, very clean build just like this one. During this live stream, also, which you should watch right here, we were very impressed, not with just how clean the build looked, but I have to say, when we were doing the testing, it was near silent, given how cool the whole thing kept the components. So if you're looking for something on the quieter side, like 46 decibels quiet, this could be a very, very solid option. So if you're looking for a mid to full tower style case and you're concerned about cooling, or if you want to get into the whole world of back connect and you're all about basically using specific power supplies, the GT302 is well worth considering. We want to give a huge shout out to ASUS, number 1, for letting us check out the TUF Gaming GT302 ARGB. You know what, it's awesome, it's not perfect, but it's dang impressive. It definitely gets the Robeytech stamp of approval, and it's got its caveats. But what I think is only one thing. We want to know what you think about it. Are you excited about this new mid-tower case? What is your favorite feature? I'd love to know all that and more down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you get a notification each and every time we post a video like this right here on Robeytech. And if you have questions or you want to know more about BTF or just talk about builds in general, head on over to our Discord server, discord.gg/Robeytech. Absolutely amazing place to have conversations with like-minded tech and PC enthusiasts. And you know what? You might just make a friend. Also, you can follow us on all the other socials at Robeytech, absolutely everywhere. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.